Hey ho hi! Welcome to the continuing winemaker series here at the Wine Month Club, and my voice is shot. I don't know why. I woke up and it was like that, but we'll do the best we can. This is Massimo Monticelli.
Hello, everybody.
Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
He's not from. Well, tell me. Actually, we didn't talk about that.
I'm actually first generation Italian.
So you're both your parents.
Yes, both my parents are from Italy, and but they met over here. And
wow, that's great. So what town, what village?
It's Pistoia is the home country. It's
Pistoia,
which is just out of. It's in Tuscany. It's just about 20 minutes out of Florence.
Which is beautiful. You guys make regular visits there as a family?
My grandparents, I still have cousins there, and I've got my grandfather and great grandfather used to make wine out there.
Oh, that's great.
We got some Sangiovese in our blood. It's
So I'm having a hard time now, given that history. So you're like my family's Armenian, but my mom is from Chicago, but my dad's from Egypt. Okay, so, but we have a very unique, very family-oriented family. We know the history of the Armenian people. You obviously understand that. Do you speak Italian?
I used to, but it's been 20 years ago. My grandparents passed on, and I really haven't
stopped talking.
I just stopped talking Italian because I had to speak Italian to them, so I don't really.
So did your parents speak Italian in the house?
Yes. So I knew when I was younger. I knew Italian and English about the same, and then then in school I started taking French, and so then my Italian goes down. It just messes everything up. So.
Actually, it's funny because my dad speaks 5 languages, and my mom and dad spoke Turkish in the house, which is a no-no in the Armenian community, right, because of the genocide. But they didn't want us to learn it because my mom said I was so embarrassed to go to kindergarten and answer questions in Turkish because the kids would laugh at me. And so I don't want you to have that experience. So they never taught us anything, and now we wish we had learned it all, right?
It was an easy time to learn it.
Yeah, right. That's when you can figure it out. Now I'm studying French every morning almost. It's for an hour. It's like, just so you know, there's a website called italki, italki.com. You go on there and you can pick any language you want. You can vet as probably dozens of professors that teach Italian, and you Skype them.
Oh, really?
And for $7, you can test them if you like their personality. And so I get on in the morning, like this morning I was supposed to, but she changed it, 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock. She's in Paris. It's amazing technology.
That's great.
And it's like $20 an hour. So now you have no excuses. So that was one of the questions when we were talking earlier, that so you have Italian varietals and Italian sort of character in your blood to grow these grapes.
Yeah. And personally, I still make a little Sangiovese.
Okay, good.
So
that's good. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So Be Wise is family owned.
Yes, the B stands for Brian. It's Brian Wise and his wife Rhonda, and they had a vision a long time ago to make an Italian-esque type of property in Sonoma, and they bought a beautiful piece of property, and it was pure. It was completely naked. Nothing had been there before, and he completely put in some fantastic vineyards on some amazing hillsides. He built his own home there. He built caves into the hillside, and we have probably one of the longest caves in California.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
It's 3 different entrances that we can come in and out of, and one of them overlooks the entire town of Sonoma, and on a clear day you can see all the way to San Francisco.
That's amazing. So where are the guest quarters? Are they right by the cave?
There's actually 2 bedrooms in the cave, and there's all sorts of little he's got some guest spots, because when you build an awesome place like this, there's always people. All these friends coming out of the woodworks. They want to spend the weekend with you.
Remember me in high school, right? People are like that when it comes to the nice things. So, in what part of Sonoma? He says by Mount Veeder. Let's say in relationship to Knights Valley. Where is that?
We're south.
You're south of Knights Valley. So we're the bottom part of the.
So we're actually really close to the town of Sonoma, and But I would say, like, if you don't know where that is exactly, we're the Sonoma Mount Veeder of Sonoma.
Okay, so you cut across. I forgot the highway below that goes through Carneros, and you end up probably very
12.
Close.
Yeah, 12 will take you right through.
Wow.
Yeah.
We were just there. We were in Sonoma Square, Sebastiani Theater, and all that. Enjoyed it very much. But we were there that day that it was pouring rain, and they closed the road.
We've had a wet year. This was a crazy wet year. But yeah, that actually happens whenever it rains a lot. That happens all the time.
So one of the questions I got with my guests, because we went to Domaine Carneros and we went to Trinchero, and we were all over the place. But they kept asking the winemaker, with all this rain, because it's dormant then, right? And they asked me in the car, and I said, they're dormant, it's not going to matter. First place they go, tell me about the rain. And I'm like, do you not believe me? I mean, I've been doing this 30 years. Come on. It's the same answer. They're dormant.
Every winter, the ground is soaked with rain. Whether it rained 50 inches or 20 inches, it's wet. And the grapes can't tell the difference. And they're dormant. They don't care.
They don't care.
And they don't turn on. Actually, they don't turn on until the soil dries out. That's actually when they start growing. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So you were mentioning the soil types at your particular property, and this fascinates me, particularly like in Burgundy, where it's just like across the street, it's different than it was. And you have many soil types where you're at.
Yeah.
And you try to keep the varietals. Tell us about what.
Yeah, well, we got to match rootstocks with the different soil types. There's more clay soil types. They're going to hold the water a little bit more. We got the gravel soil types. The water's going to pass through a little faster, and we've got all these different rootstocks that actually match up to whatever we want to do, and actually even how thick the soil is, because sometimes your topsoil is only 2 feet, and sometimes it's 3 feet, and sometimes it's 4. You got to find the rootstock that actually matches with that.
And it needs to go. And do you irrigate during non?
Yes, we do, but not very much, because the roots in the very beginning, when the vines are young, we water a lot more because we don't want them to die.
Of course.
But later on, when the vines get stronger, the water gets cut back, and it's only if the vines show that they're starting to starve that we give them some water.
It's interesting, because that is one of we were talking about natural wines, and I had Molly Hill in here from Sequoia Grove. We were talking about the same subject, and one of the things that people talk about is that it's dry irrigated. I don't understand what's unnatural about a little water. I mean, what's unnatural about a vine and a piece of dirt with some water?
Plus, every year's different, and we want perfect grapes every year. I don't want to wait 10 years for that perfect vintage. I want a perfect vintage now.
Right, that's right.
So we'll water accordingly, but whether it's we're in a drought or whether or we won't water at all if it's a wet year. I mean, that's just we'll match it to what we want to do.
It seems, particularly in France anyway, and particularly in Burgundy, the weather, the climate change to them has affected the way they trellis, affected the way they canopy. Bordeaux guys are saying yes, but it's really not effective. Has there been any changes in Sonoma that would force you to, not force you, but would have you change the techniques?
Not really. We're still a relative baby in the industry as far as world wine is concerned.
Sure.
And we're still trying to find our way on what exactly we want. What the best way to do things with our soil and our climate is. And as it's changing, that'll change with what we're doing. But we're constantly always looking for a better way to do things. We're not going to just sit back and say, okay, this is the best way, this is it.
Yeah, right, we're done.
Never look back at it. No, we're always going to try to find something to make it better.
So there's a vineyard manager, you do that too?
No, there's a vineyard manager.
Okay. Yeah. So you guys talk?
We always talk, and just advice, because I'm going through the vineyards also, and it's like, hey, I noticed block 12 is a little starting to get a little overgrown.
Poor block 12. We all feel sorry for that block 12. How is the block? How are the blocks defined? Is it by the soil type, the varietal,
both, all of them? So the blocks are designed around the different soil types. But even within a larger block, would be cut up into 3 blocks, and then we experimented. We tried a few different rootstocks, and we tried a few different clones of Cabernet, because there's the top where you produce the grape. We're like, okay, well there's 6 different clones of Cabernet that we're interested in, and which ones do the best on this soil type and in this place, and we want to find it.
So when you're doing that, because one of the other conversations I've had a lot with winemakers is we're no longer just pricking the grape and checking the sugar, and it's 23 bricks, it's time to pick. We're actually looking at the skin thickness. We're looking at the kinds of pH and things that are on the skin itself.
Yes.
We're actually tasting the grapes more often.
Actually, I do almost everything by taste.
So that's fascinating.
If you forced me to pick a way to pick based on numbers, I'd probably choose pH.
Yeah, right.
Because there's a pH fluctuation right when the grapes start to go into a different cycle. And so that's the way I would do it if you made me pick a number. But even then, no, I still want to taste them and come back the next day and taste them again. And they're like, okay, they're ready. Let's pick them.
So I have this vision of you at the dinner table with these plates of grapes, and you just
actually, I'll be honest with you, I don't eat a single grape the entire year long, other than harvest. Because after harvest, I'm sick of them. I don't want to eat any more grapes.
Okay, that's funny. That's really funny. Actually, Molly said the same exact thing. She's like, I'm tired of grapes, right? But it's fascinating to me because when we, for instance, the Whole Foods, they sell, sometimes they have Muscat grapes. And it's one of the easy grapes to taste and go, oh yeah, I taste the wine of that.
There's the lychee nut flavor that you get out of
it's just
Muscat.
so obvious, right?
Yeah.
But with things like Cab or Merlot or Tannat, I mean, I would think there's a difference between Tannat grape character and the Cab, but how is it?
Yeah, they all, like, the skins are a huge difference, and then the even the seeds. I mean, if you want to look at them, the size of the grape is different.
That's true.
Huge berries, small berries. And then there's the tannin level that's in the skin and the seeds. But even then, all that fluctuates based on where those grapes are grown. You know, you grow the same grape in Central California that you do on a hillside in Napa, and you're gonna have a much different size of berry, and it'd be a hard time. It'd be hard to tell the difference. It'd be hard to. You need to compare apples to apples.
Yeah, that's
what I'm trying to say.
Well, there's a book called Tangled Vines by Francis Driekenspiel. It's a really interesting book. If you haven't read it, you'll know all the players, but she parallels the arson, greed, theft, murder in the wine business throughout history, starting in 1750 down here in Southern California, Rancho Cucamonga, where the wine trade started in California. It ends in Sausalito in 2005, where Mark Anderson burned down that famous wine storage facility with like $200 million worth of wine. Yeah. Along the way, she sort of tangents off, and one of the things she talks about is the white Zinfandel scam, where they were picking the leaves off of Zinfandel vines and putting them on top of the Grenache grapes, so that when
so that people would see the leaves.
So when the winemaker saw the leaves, he goes, "Oh, it's Zinfandel," and they get Charles Shaw, the guy that makes Charles Shaw, got busted for this big time. It was a big fine, and he almost went to jail for that. Right? It's a pretty interesting stuff.
That's actually why, even with everything I do, I'm on the small scale. So I'm actually there when they're picking the block of grapes that
you're watching. Those are the grapes
I want. Yeah, I want to make sure they don't go to the wrong block. It's like, no, we said block 12, not block 11.
That's right.
And it's important to.
But that part's fascinating to see. Now, my brother-in-law was driving by Silver Oak about, I don't know, a couple years ago. And they were putting out little seedlings, right? Yeah. And they're planting them. And he pulls over and he asks the guy, he goes, "Hey, what's going on?" He goes, "Oh, we're planting." He goes, Can I get a couple of those?" And the guy goes, "Sure." So he gives him like 4 or 5 little seedling things. And he planted them in Glendale. And he keeps thinking he has Silver Oak Cabernet coming. He keeps showing me the vines. They're beautiful vines right now. He's really a brown thumb. Everything he touches is, green thumb. I'm a brown thumb. He's a green thumb. He touches seems to grow. Everything I touch seems to die. But I'm thinking, Greg, you're going to have Glendale Cabernet, not.
And he's probably going to have the humidity being higher. He's going to have a hard time fighting mildew, and there's a lot of. And then the growing season's different. The soil you planted them in is probably more. It's probably too fertile of a soil.
Probably.
And you actually, grapes like to be, like people, they need to be stressed a little bit.
You mean growing it right off the driveway?
To develop some personality.
Yeah, right off the driveway is not going to be a good spot for that.
Yes, it's not. But it'll look pretty.
That's right. It does look good. Well, then that part sort of leads me into this other conversation, which I love having, which is you are what you eat. In general, that's what the humans have figured out, that if you eat organic foods, or if you at least try to eat better foods than what you've typically used to, you're going to feel better. And it seems to me that grapes are the same way, that if you less intervention. You mentioned that you have organic fields, but you haven't gone through the certification.
We're still farm. The whole point, I feel that the true idea behind organic farming and everything like that is actually paying attention to your vineyard, your crop, whatever it is, paying attention to it, and not just blindly spraying things on a schedule. It's like, well, it's April 1st, so we spray this, and it's April 15th, and we spray this, and it's like, no, you go out in the vineyard, you're like, no, this doesn't need to be touched at all.
Yes.
Everything's perfect. Leave it alone. And And then it's like, okay, yeah, no, we're starting to get a little bit of we're getting some leaf hoppers in here, and we'll spray an organic compound. I mean, we are organic. We don't use anything but we're not bothering to go through the certification.
So that's an interesting question. So when he bought the property, there was nothing on it, right? And I know that conversion from conventional farming to organic takes 5 years or whatever, 7 years, and you have to make sure follow the rules, and all of a sudden you can get certification because toxins or whatever it's in the soil has now filtered away, right? Yeah. But if nothing was being planted there when it started from scratch, I wonder what the difference is in certification.
I think it's only a 2-year process.
And since you, oh, of course, I didn't turn off my phone thing. There we go. That's good. Yeah, everybody know that's raw and unedited. So I want to taste a couple of these things. Now, this is fascinating. Loved this Rhonda. Rhonda happens to be...
Rhonda is Brian's wife.
Okay, good.
Of the BY. So this is R-Wise. And...
R-Wise.
And so basically her and her friends love rosé. And so she asked me to make some rosé. And I said, of course I will. And
what's in this?
So this is mostly Pinot Noir. And we actually make this to be rosé. So a lot of people like to take a saignée or a bleed off a tank of ripe grapes and concentrate what's left in the tank, and they make a rosé out of the bleed.
Right.
That's not what we do. We actually pick the grapes ripe, more a little on the underripe side, where the acid is still naturally in there, and we press them directly and make a wine out of it. So this is about 91% Pinot Noir, and we put a little Grenache in there too, just to give it a little extra fruit. But
excuse me, I don't think I'm trying to remember how many Pinot Noir rosés I've tasted from Sonoma. It's probably below 10. It seems a very unusual animal. I mean, typically Grenache, everybody puts Mourvèdre or Grenache, or rosé with Grenache and Syrah, etc. And I've seen Pinot. I've seen a lot of Pinot Noir rosés, but not Sonoma Pinot Noir rosé.
Well,
it's fascinating.
We're basically, for me, I tried a few other varieties to make Pinot Noir, rosé out of. And Pinot Noir actually turned out to be the most delicate and expressive. I like. To me, rosé should be crisp and light, not overbearing in fruits and everything like that. It should be something that you just drink and it's easy going down. You're sitting by the pool and enjoying yourself.
And you get the Pinot.
Yeah,
it's great, and it's actually, now that's warming up a little bit, it's actually more effusive of that character, and it's complex, certainly complex enough. But the nose is intoxicating, actually.
Yeah, no, I like the.
What number of vintage is this for the rosé?
This is 2018, and we've been making. This is actually the first, I would say, real vintage. I've made vintages in the past, but it was only 50, 100 cases of rosé at the time. So it was more for personal consumption from us at the winery.
Well, I made the comment too that you put the glass cap, which we've started to see a lot more of, and I'm very impressed that you have a machine that can insert it.
Yeah.
Because the guys are malleting the thing.
We don't want to put them in. Because, well, plus I want people to be able to get them off, so it has to come off, fairly easy. So
right, sure.
But it does make a good seal. It goes right in there, and so if I don't know why you wouldn't finish the whole bottle, but you can put this back in the refrigerator and.
Yeah, that's a good point, right?
I have a personal, growing up in a wine family, is like, if you can't finish the bottle, don't open it.
Yeah, I agree. We were home the other night, and he started bringing out his regular cabs. He goes, well, let's bring out some good stuff. I said, okay, but make sure you're going to finish it.
Yeah.
You're not going to leave this sitting around. So we finished it.
Good job.
So this is the saignée. I always pronounce it wrong. The idea of bleeding off. There's a French methodology, right, for that, and you've opted not to do that.
Yeah. So and that's to make the rosé. I actually, in my other wines, I still do a bleed, but I don't use that wine. It's.
And where are you bleeding that from? The bottom?
Yeah. So you wait right when you crush the grapes into a tank. You actually just open up the bottom valve a little bit and bleed off the juice. This is actually before the juice has had any chance to pick up any color or flavor from the
so
skins.
It's clear at that point.
It's fairly clear, and then so you basically throw that away, and then what's left in the tank is more concentrated. So you have more skin to juice ratio, and it actually concentrates the wine. You get a much more powerful, more full-bodied wine.
Are you using natural yeast on these? Inoculate them a little bit.
I do actually try to use natural yeast, but I'm not opposed to using store-bought yeast when if the natural guys aren't doing their job. And then that's
not. I mean, that's a hazard, right? Using natural yeast is they get locked up and they stop. No, can you like at that point see that happening and then throw in some store-bought yeast, or do
sometimes
and just start out with?
If you knew the secret recipe to never have a stuck fermentation,
you'd be a pro. Right?
You could be making some money.
However, thanks to Bob Trincaro and White Zinfandel, you got a stuck fermentation, and now it's not changed the wine industry. Because one winemaker was here and he was telling me, he's have a catalog of yeasts from all over the world that are natural yeast taken from a vintage from the skins, obviously, and then I don't know how they preserve them, but they sell them.
They'll isolate the yeast, and then they'll propagate them, and then it's a freeze drying process that just gives you that powder, and it looks just like baking yeast.
Can't we just say that's natural too?
Yeah, well, it is, right? It is. It's just you're being selective about what. And to me, if it makes a better wine, then I would rather have a better wine than have a purely natural organic. Well, I stuck to my guns and made garbage. Then that does nobody any good.
Right. We were just talking about that downstairs and the experience of a good glass of wine and what it does to the soul and what it does for conversation and all the things that go with a good glass of wine. And you don't have to understand the wine. You don't have to get into it like we are right now. You just have to know that when you taste it, this feels good to you.
I like this,
right? It's to emote some things.
It's the same with food. I mean, you don't have to. Not everybody likes the same thing, but when you like something,
right?
And
you can. I had this question. Let me ask you this question. Maybe it's sort of it's not a leading question, but we had a chef in here. He's a very well-known guy in the Southern California area. And I said, okay, we went to the market and we went to Ralph's and we went to the non-organic section and we bought asparagus and we bought all the things that we're going to make dinner with. Mm-hmm. And I want a complicated dinner. Mm-hmm. And then we went to Santa Monica's farmer's market, which is very famous for chefs to shop at, and we bought the same exact ingredients and we made exactly the same thing with the same temperatures and the same process. Does one taste better than the other?
That depends.
I think it does.
I think it does, especially because a lot of if you're going to the mega store, a lot of that is mass produced. Like you're talking about thousands of acres of a crop growing at the same time, and if you're talking about farmers market and it's all picked at the same time and it's all shipped at the same time, it's not all ripe at the same time or ready to go at the same time. And then, to me, like if you go to the farmer's market, you're actually getting things that are being grown and watched and cared for, and
I think that's a huge. This funny thing. The chef friend of mine didn't agree with that, and I said, "Well, there has to be a reason why when you look in the freeway, in the 5 freeway, and there's this giant truck of tomatoes, and the tomatoes on the bottom aren't squished.
Yeah,
what the hell did they do that tomato?
Because those are all green tomatoes.
Yes,
they're all green. It's that,
and they're not going to ripen the same way.
No, and anybody that's had a tomato, I mean, you've had a big store bought tomato. I remember growing up as a kid, and people other kids telling me that they hated tomatoes, and I could not comprehend.
Oh,
what
because
I only had tomatoes that we grew ourselves, and so I've never had a store-bought tomato. And then all of a sudden, I had one, and I was like, "Oh, I don't like this either."
That's funny. That's really funny.
I never knew what a mealy tomato tasted like.
It's so bad.
It's like
Well, you mentioned something important that there's a book called The Third Plate by Dan Barber, the chef from Blue Hill Farms in New York. It's all organic and biodynamic, really, I think. But he says in the book, you can't feed the world organically. It doesn't produce enough, right? So, and Americans screwed up their vineyards and not their vineyards, but their wheat crops and things. And now we're trying to get some of that back, and it takes time to do that. But eventually, you can't produce enough of those organic biodynamic wheats and things to feed the world. No, you have to have some conventional farming just to do it.
Yeah,
my daughter's a chef in New York. She's a baking chef, and she makes bread, and she makes incredible bread. And she uses her yeast, her starter that she started like 7-8 years ago. She started this stuff, and she's been in our refrigerator. Travels to New York, and the breads get better and better. They propagate themselves, and it's just better food. It's just better food. And I think with grapes, it's the same thing. Yeah, it's what they eat. It's important. And the intervention. I mean, I can understand the idea that natural wine is less there's less intervention. We try to do as little as possible.
And that's, to me, that's a great philosophy. That's, I mean, what we should all strive to be doing, is let things be what they want to be. But there's no reason to also die on that sword for no reason.
No, right, exactly.
Okay, this is, something happened and we got to fix it. I'm going to add yeast to this because the natural yeast aren't doing anything, and I'm getting scared, and I don't want to explain to the boss why this batch of wine went bad.
Right. Be wise about it.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell me about the Chardonnay. I sense a little oak.
Yeah.
But I still get some Chardonnay, grape flavors. And the balance seems like right on.
That's all we're trying to do, is make a balanced Chardonnay that has kept a little original Chardonnay flavor too. Because to me, a lot of Chardonnays now don't really have any Chardonnay flavor. It's just oak. And so this actually, first of all, finding the right vineyard. This vineyard is actually out by the coast where it's a little cooler, and it gives you a little bit more of more acidity to the wine. And then I only use 30% new oak and 30% malolactic. Those barrels I let go malolactic. So there's only a little bit of butter in there.
Right. You're right.
A little creme brulee. Nothing.
Perfect example.
Nothing crazy, because in the end I want it to finish clean and with nice crisp acidity. That's what I'm looking for.
Actually, the acidity is perfect, and it's long. I'm getting the green apple. I'm getting that apple acid. It's just hanging around.
That's the vineyard. The vineyard is what makes that.
And how old is that vineyard, you think?
Oh, that vineyard is.
Who knows?
It's only about 10 years old.
Oh, so it's still pretty young.
Still pretty young, yeah.
Because I keep smelling this, and I'm getting wonderful complexity, and your creme brulee in there, and then a little bit of green apple. There's some lemon rind in there, or something.
Well, part of the cool thing about to me, the oak in this is perfect, and part of that is actually the barrels that we use. Brian Wise, being the guy he is, he was like, I was complaining about some of the barrels I was getting from some of the other coopers. He was like, well, let's fix this. And basically, he went to France, bought some logs from a forest in France.
Come on.
Had them seasoned, and we actually hired a master cooper.
Come on! Wow.
To actually make us our own barrels, so we actually get the exact same quality product every time, and it's a little touch like that gives us our.
Okay, that's the first I've ever heard that. I mean, I understand minimal intervention, but to go to the forest and find your wood,
and that way we know what we're getting. Because if you go, all these large barrel companies, they're taking logs from everywhere.
Yeah, right.
They get stored in a big old facility. Then a lot of those planks, they tell you that this comes from this part of France or this part of France. But I don't know, because I think for them things get lost in the mix. And
right.
So you get a blend of staves from all sorts of different parts.
That's
and
amazing.
different barrels, and I know that when there's a lot of times I'm trying barrels from other producers, and there's a lot of variety. It's like, I love this barrel. That barrel's okay. It's just.
Well, it doesn't matter, right? It's a barrel select. I mean, when the winemakers say they're barrel select, that's because I don't know if the general wine drinking public understands that you can take the same grape from the same vineyard. The vines can be right next to each other. Put them in two different barrels, and you end up with two different wines.
Completely.
Yeah,
completely.
That's fascinating. Well, since we're talking about barrels and things, we were talking about keto, paleo. I don't know what else is there. Vegan and gluten-free, and one of the misnomers about wine, I'm sure most people don't even know they're probably drinking vegan wine, just because if you don't use egg whites and there's no animal products around the vineyard, it's vegan, right? That
basically the only time you could make it not vegan is by adding fining agents at the very
egg whites or the she shells or whatever.
And I would even say, the egg white, exactly. The fish guts, there's all sorts of cool things to add.
Delicious.
But to me, if you have to add those things, you messed up in your winemaking process. Like those are to fix a problem. I think you should have picked correctly. Your fermentation should have gone correctly. And your barrel aging should have gone correctly, and then you wouldn't have to add egg whites or do anything like that.
John Sally has this wine called the Vegan Wine Company, and the wines are very good, Chardonnay and Cabernet. He says, I'm having trouble selling this at the steakhouses. Oh, really?
Oh, really?
That's a shock, right? And I keep telling the story over, but it's really funny because the wine was really good, and I think if you put, I think suppose it's okay here, you put your certification of vegan, that's fine, but if you put vegan on the front and it's on the shelf, most people are going to look at it and go, what does that mean? And maybe it's weird.
Yeah, and well, to me personally, we could put vegan on this bottle right here. I could say this, it is vegan, but I don't actually want that to be the selling point. I actually want our name brand and our grapes and our quality to be the selling point, not a label.
And this is excellent. It's called Wisdom. It's you said it started out as a Zinfandel based red. Now it's Cabernet based. But what else is in it?
There's basically Zin, Cab Zin, Syrah, Merlot.
Oh, really? Okay. A little bit of everything,
a little Petit Verdot, and basically the blend will change over the years based on what I got and what tastes good. You know, I mean, I won't put bad stuff in there, but it's just what tastes good. It's like when we do all these bench trials and we do the little.
Do you bottle any of those things besides the Cab, which we're going to taste? But do you bottle the Petit Verdot by itself, or
we have? If it's good enough, we'll bottle it by itself. Cabernet Franc the same way.
Really?
If it's a bag, some years I was like, okay, this is good Cabernet Franc, but it has to be great for me to bottle it by itself.
Well, both of those are odd animals to bottle themselves, and it takes a certain character that people will want to taste, right?
Yeah.
There's one downstairs that was sitting there when you were talking in the tasting room that was from France. I'm having a hard time. It's all Cabernet Franc. I think it's Cahors. Trying to like, okay, I think I get this wine, but I just can't buy it because it's just a little too directional, and people aren't going to like it, right?
It definitely takes a special year, special vintage, special property, everything to make that work.
And it's meant to blend into and bring back.
It's designed to blend, exactly.
Right.
That's the.
So this was going after the Prisoner.
Yeah, so we were going after the Prisoner, and then we decided to make it more our style. We to me the Prisoner is a little too sweet, so I cut back on the sugar, and then I realized that I liked our Cabernet a little bit better than the Zinfandel. So let's put a little more Cabernet in there. Let's not copy. Let's make something that we like ourselves.
Sure.
And make it good.
So when you're the Prisoners, what do you think? I mean, you can barely perceive, let's say, 1.5% sugar, right?
Yeah.
Right. So 2, you can start to kind of taste it. It's a little fruity, and now 4, 5, all of a sudden, it starts getting cloying and a little.
To me, about 3 is where I start.
Do you think that's where those kinds of wines are, like the Prisoners and their copycats, 3 to 5?
3 to 5 to 6. There's actually a lot of the larger wineries. The larger labels
they're making that stuff.
Are all the way up to 10 grams per liter. It's
But it's also, I thought originally it was kind of used just to get the bitterness out of a lower quality grape. You know, just throw a little sugar. Like when I'm cooking and I have over salt, I put a little sugar to balance it out.
It's actually a grape concentrate that they're adding. So
so
you're actually adding. So that's why you get that super dark color. In the wines,
right.
Because you're adding this concentrated color jam.
Gee, I was just disappointed. I had this vision of C&H sugar pink thing going into the vat like that, right?
That's illegal.
That's illegal. Well, and I think people like those wines. In fact, downstairs in my tasting room, which is open this Saturday, we pour through our regular stuff, which is mostly dry, and then I usually save something to the end that is the Cellar Master's selection. Now, this week is going to be a Bordeaux, but I poured like the bourbon barrel wines. You know, these things clearly have 4 or 5, maybe 6% sugar in them, and they're huge hits. But that's after you've had like 7 or 8 dry wines in your mouth. It needs that sensation. Why dessert exists when we eat food, right?
There's always that after effect of what you've had before versus what you have next, and you try it again the next day in a reverse order, and all of a sudden,
totally different.
Your favorite is not your favorite anymore. This one is, and it's.
In fact, I tell this story all the time, but it's my favorite. It's one of my favorite expressions of the wine experience and what it means to have wine. And we were just talking about that a little bit. My new thing is I read this quote from Ernest Hemingway in A Movable Feast, which was his time in Paris, and he has this paragraph, and it's an incredible paragraph about oysters and white wine. And he finishes with, and I became happy, and I began to make plans. So it just changed his whole outlook on life by doing this, right? But another one is, I just lost my train of thought. The brain fart. This is called sometimer's disease when I at 60 years old.
To me, but there is a magical connection with when you have a moment where some food and some wine and the day,
it's the experience,
and the company you're with. And it can be a life-changing experience.
You must be psychic because you made me remember what I was thinking. And that is, customers always ask me, can you get this Chianti? Can you get this Bordeaux that I had when I was in France? And I get them the vintage, and I get them the direct wine. And then they call, and they have them call me and say, doesn't taste the same. I'm like, it doesn't taste the same because you're not in front of the Parthenon or standing in front of the Chateau Latour, you know, at a picnic.
Yeah.
Right. That's a different experience, and
Experience,
that's the difference between wine and any other alcoholic beverage. You drink Heineken because it tastes like Heineken. You drink Jim Beam because the master distiller made it taste like the Jim Beam 10 years ago. Wine doesn't. Wine's ethereal. It makes you feel something. It's an experiential drink.
Yeah.
And this has great. I feel this wine.
Yeah, no, it's I've got a great story that shows that point. I remember when I was younger in college, I went on a date with a girl that wouldn't. I really had no business going on a date with her. It must have been a moment of weakness.
A girl that wouldn't.
For her. Yeah, it must have been a moment of weakness for her to say yes to me because this shouldn't have belonged with her beauty. But went out to dinner, had some wine at dinner. It was just a great time. You know, the next day, I told my brothers, like, I'm going to go buy this bottle of wine. You got to try this bottle of wine. And, you know, at lunchtime, I opened it up with my brother, and my brother goes like, well, it's okay. And I'm like, you're not pretty enough.
Yeah, that's very fun. That's exactly right, though.
And that's all it was. I had a wonderful evening, and that's what made that wine taste great.
That's exactly what it is. And so here, in this environment that I'm in, which is the direct consumer, and there's Groupon, and there's internet, and there's 12 wines for $60, and it's all junk.
Yeah.
And so my position is, and I'm sure you agree with me, that's not the experience, right? The experience is not, hey, I got this wine for $5.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not an experience. And then you kind of taste it, you go, well, no wonder it's only $5.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And that makes you feel nothing except that you got ripped off. And so drinking proper wine, and it kind of goes back to that bumper sticker, life's too short to drink bad wine, right? Yeah. But what's bad? Well, it's wine that doesn't make you feel anything.
Yeah.
Not about its manufacturing process. Why I don't think that just the fact that it was made at a large co-op, or look at some of the great wines that come out of France or from co-ops, that's necessarily itself a bad wine. You can make very good wines that way. It's how much attention was paid to that wine to make you feel like something when you drink it. That's what it's for, right? And you guys get to touch the wine, you get to touch the vineyards, you get to decide what's happening.
I love that,
yeah.
too. I love...
So this was extraordinary. So the Moon Mountain is now down the south side, which I think is a wonderful district for Cabernet, all along that bottom part of Sonoma. What's the story behind this? This is their state. This is not their state, but this is sort of the.
It is from our state. This all these grapes.
This is your lead wine.
Came from our state. But this is actually our entry level.
Oh, is it really? Okay.
Cabernet, which is.
You guys brought me the entry level Cabernet. No, I'm kidding.
I love saying that because this is a fantastic
really
wine.
good.
A lot of people would have this as their best wine, and this is our entry level, and this is.
I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, well,
it's complex. It's got enough fruit. It's got enough acid.
If we had grapes that we didn't like, we would stop getting those grapes. And so we're at a point now where we don't bother with anything we don't love.
Yeah, right.
And so if it's not working for us, then we dump it. We get rid of it. We sell the grapes to somebody else and move forward. Because
I love the nose. It keeps changing on me actually as I'm smelling it. You know?
I love the.
So where's this in Los Angeles? Is it being poured somewhere? Do you know?
It's poured in quite a few restaurants. It's not really in many retail shops, but it's in quite a few restaurants.
How long are you here for this trip?
I'm here for a couple days. I'm here for the week.
There's a steakhouse in Manhattan Beach called the Arthur J.
Okay.
And it's a hip young steakhouse, contemporary, great music. We go there all the time. And they have a wonderful wine list. This would be perfect for this list. And what's good about it is that they're already.
It's on it.
Okay. See how good I am? And the reason I said that is that, well, besides the wine and the kind of food they serve, but as well, they're willing to take on, one bottle from one vendor. So when I talked to the somm there, I said, this is a very extraordinary list, just what I could tell, where they were sourced from. Yeah, I said, you must have 50 vendors. He goes, no, I have 100. Because he just picks the wines that go with his foods. And it's okay if I have to write a check to another company, and have my bookkeeper stacked with invoices. Because that's one of the decisions we make.
Yeah,
right?
I know a lot of people that don't do that because
it's just too much work.
Yeah.
But I have to look for this now, because I don't like their house pours generally, though they try to be creative. But I'm going to look for this on the list. This is so this is all cab. There's no Tannat or anything like that.
No, it's not. Depending on the year, I might have put a little Petit Verdot in, but we're talking a percent or two. I didn't. It's 98% cab at least, if not 100.
How many cases?
We do about we do about 700 cases.
Oh, it's a pretty good size.
Yeah.
And what is Mr. Wise's objective on all this? Just enjoy the wine business, make good wine, make people feel good, or like become this monolith of winemaking? Or
he actually wants to make the best wine possible that he can. And we've had many philosophical discussions about this, and I keep telling him, it's like, as flattered as I would be if it was my doing as a winemaker, it's not. It's actually the pedigree of the grapes, and the grapes you get are everything. And I told him, I said, you really shouldn't pay me more. You should actually buy more.
Yeah, that's clever.
Buy better grapes if you want better wine.
That's interesting. It starts in the vineyard,
yeah,
right?
It does. It completely does. Just like when we were talking about tomatoes, you start with a good tomato. If you start with a bad tomato, I don't know what you're gonna do about that.
You can't make good wine from bad grapes, right? Hey, Massimo, it's been fascinating to have you here. I appreciate you coming in this morning, and we got you in just at the last minute. I know you have a full day today, so we appreciate the opportunity. And it looks like you're on your way.
Well, thank you very much. I love what I do. I'm having a great time. I can't. You have no idea how happy I am to be able to geek out and talk about stuff. There's a lot of people. My wife gets annoyed.
Mine does too, by the way. But before we turn this off, you were. I don't know if you didn't say undergrad that you went to biology or anything, but you wanted to be a doctor and you spent time in the emergency room. Just give me a brief.
Well, I just
life change there.
I came home one day from the emergency room and I just said, I just don't like this style and actually it was even the people that I was surrounded by. That's interesting. I want people like my coworkers should be my friends and I should want to like them and hang out with them, but
not this group, huh?
Not really. I was just like, I don't want to get a beer with you after work.
That's interesting. But you studied biology as an undergrad?
Yes, biology and chemistry. I was gung ho, and then basically instead of taking the MCAT, I took the GRE, went to Davis, to get my master's in wine, and I've been blessed. I mean, my first job right out of the gates was an internship at Silver Oak, and then they hired me for a couple of years.
Wow,
and then,
that's great pedigree.
And then after that, actually, I went on my own after that. So
so I was at Trebecchieri earlier this year, a few months ago, which is the Italian show, right? And I interviewed about 7 winemakers. Mm-hmm. I took a little studio down there. 4 of them went to medical school. Mm-hmm. And said, I think I'm going to go into the family business. Yeah, and one of them was named Massimo.
Oh, wow. Well. Sounds like a cool guy.
Cheers.